There's a reason for that. There is a reason for that. That is not just perception. That's not just you getting older and sclerotic, like me. That's actually just what we're surrounded by. And so the key concept is, yeah, that they're everywhere, but really it's this. The thing that I care about most is that they speed up a lot towards the end. So as you think about where you want to be in 2050, I would submit to you that there's no time like the present. Because what's possible today may not be quite as possible tomorrow. What was possible for Greece 3 years ago is not quite as possible today. And that's, in large measure, a function of the world we live in. So I want to frame something very quickly. It comes from a gentleman I know, John Michael Greer. He writes really beautiful stuff. And he framed these two words for me, and I've been in his depth ever since. And it's the difference between problems and predicaments. So problems have solutions. Go for it. Apply yourself. And a solution meaning you can get yourself back to the original condition or better. Predicaments have outcomes you have to manage. And it's really important to know the difference, because if you're facing a predicament but trying solutions, you might just be wasting time and effort. So here's a pictorial. I am a rock climber. Totally fake picture. Very sorry for any other climbers. But these two gentlemen have a problem on their hands, meaning we can solve this, right? Lower a rope, put a crash pad under there, maybe he swings on and climbs down, but there are ways to solve this. This gentleman has a predicament on his hands. And no matter how much he wishes he was back on top and he's applying the solution of pinwheeling his arms, it's not going to happen. Better to manage the outcome. Belly flop or landing on his feet. Very important, which is which. And I submit to you that we're surrounded by a variety of predicaments today, and perhaps none more striking than this one. In energy, we have an extraordinary challenge on us. And this quote by one of the four earliest promoters of the idea of peak oil, Colin Campbell, I think captures it perfectly. Tomorrow's growth, that is the collateral for today's day. Our capital markets, our debt markets, and our equity markets are all counting on, relying, expecting, otherwise demanding that we're going to have growth. Lots of growth tomorrow. And if we don't, now what? Well, guess what? Things are going to be worth a lot less if they work at all. And that's just an incredibly important idea to look at. United States, I know we've been inundated recently with a lot of stories about how we have this extraordinary explosion in energy that's coming forward. There's a lot of hype and propaganda in there. I don't have time to unpack it all right now. But the crux of the story is that we've been recently, the IEA and other agencies have been confusing what's oil by putting in things like natural gas liquids and other stuff. But crude oil is what we really care about. This is the stuff that moves 95% of everything that goes from A to B in our world, does so because of oil. Crude oil, not this other stuff they're tossing in with it now. And the United States did hit a peak of production back in 1970. We do have a little renaissance going on, but it is not yet if you can see, if you look along this chart, just after the peak, there's that other little bump. That's Prudhoe Bay, largest field that was ever discovered in the United States, extraordinary find. And at the time, there were articles all through the press saying, this is it, we're back. We're going to do it again. And this time, our own little bump right now takes us, it's about half the size of that bump, the current one we're experiencing. And it could go further. There's a lot that could happen, but it's not the same story as the earlier oil for a bunch of reasons that are important to look at. The United States still imports a lot of oil, a little over half right now. Under the most rosy scenarios, we'll still be importing 15 to 20%. Under more realistic scenarios, we'll be importing probably a third of our oil forever. And is that a problem or a predicament? If it's a problem, we can just drill more holes in the ground and we'll solve it. If it's a predicament, we actually have run through our main bequeathment of oil. This is the most important chart. If I was given one chart for peak oil, it'd be this one. So the people in the oil business, they're really cranky, and they have this saying, which is you have to find oil before you can pump it. And they insist on it. So how much we're pumping is one story, but what we really care about is how much we're finding. And this chart is very, very telling. So the peak of discoveries was in the 1960s. There's a beautiful bell-shaped curve to this. And when I show this chart, sometimes I hear people like, oh, wait, I heard about, there's these fields off of Brazil, the Tupi fields. They're incredible. 26,000 feet down, but 30 billion barrels. That's extraordinary. That's the size of the lowest green on the left, all the way to your left. What about the Bakken field? 4 billion barrels in the Bakken play up in North Dakota. Extraordinary. 4 billion barrels is about the width of the white line on the bottom. I don't want to denigrate them and say they're not important and they're not significant, but they are in no way comparable to what we used to be finding. No way. And so this is where we happen to be on this story, and the actual peak year was 1964, only kind of coincidentally interesting because the United States peaked in discoveries in 1930, peaked in production in 1970, 40 years, easy math on that. And what's interesting is that the world has been bumping along a plateau of oil production since 2005, which is 41 years after 64. So it seems to me that we have a lot of compelling data that says, look, we were finding a whole lot, now we're working really hard to find less and less. That is inarguably true. And it's a really fascinating story when we look at, this chart when it came out in 2008 should have been everything, where the International Energy Agency at that time had pointed out something really important, which was that we were past peak on what they called crude oil from currently producing fields, which is a euphemism for cheap. We are past cheap oil, period. End of story. I've talked to lots of people who work in the oil business, and they say, oh, wait a minute, this fracking, we've had that for 30 years. Horizontal drilling, we've been doing that for 40. What we haven't had was oil that was over $70 a barrel long enough so that we could actually chase what they call the dregs, which is what we're chasing. And they're nice dregs, but we have to be clear, they're not cheap, and they're not easy. And so we're past peak conventional oil, and ever since we went past peak in conventional oil, mysteriously, oil prices have tripled. It's not that mysterious when you look at it. Persistently high and rising oil prices are now a feature of our system. If oil ever does crash below 75 a barrel again, they will stop drilling in the plays that they're currently drilling, because that's what it costs to just return the capital. Period. End of story. And there's some limit to how many barrels of oil we're going to be able to get out of the ground at some point. And the IEA, as recently as 2007, was thinking we'd have 130 million barrels per day by 2030, and now they think maybe 96, maybe. And that's if everything goes well. That's extraordinary, because all the growth we had in the past was having our oil growing at 2 to 2.5% per year. And now that growth that's embedded in that is half of that. So where's our growth going to come from? Oh, something else. And this is a story that our financial markets have not really fully internalized yet. The most important number of peak oil is this. Anybody in here 22 years old? I'm close. I'm close. So, in the last 22 years, half of all the oil that humans have ever consumed has been consumed. Now what happens over the next 22 years? And then the next 22? And so on and so forth. This was the cheap stuff. The next 22 years is not cheap. Guaranteed. And there's a variety of reasons for that. But this is an incredibly important number. Another number that I used to use was 10, which was the number of fossil fuel calories that are baked in every calorie of food that we ate today, for instance. But Eric's got maybe more updated numbers that might go as 15 or 19 or something higher. There's a lot of energy embodied in our food. It's an extraordinarily important number. So the quantity of oil, that's what's been in the news lately is, oh, look, the United States might overtake Saudi Arabia or something or something. That's on a quantity side, but the part that I was really disappointed that the IEA has not gotten to yet is a different part of this story, which is even more important. This is the most important part of the oil story. You'll hear more about this as years go on. Right now, it's still early. But this is a mock representation. We're trying to ask the question, look, it doesn't matter how much oil we get out of the ground or how much energy we get. What matters is how much energy do we have to put in to get that energy. So if I'm a potato farmer and I burn 1,000 calories and I get 1,000 back, there's none left over for my family or the town or to do anything fun with. What we care about is the energy returned and energy invested. So this hypothetical chart outlines that. The green is the energy we get back. The red is the energy that we have to invest to get the energy. And so this is an energy out divided by energy in. And so if you see a number like 50 all the way on the left, it means we got 50 barrels back for 1 barrel of oil in. Gives us a 98% return. That's where you get that, where the green and the red meet up there to your left. And then this chart crosses over here at 1. You get 0 back when you're at 1 because there's no surplus energy left for society. You're just spinning your wheels. You're keeping your engineers busy. They're happy, but that's it. Nothing else happens. And this is an important story because when we first started getting oil out of the ground, we were getting 100-to-1 returns. Couldn't fit it on this chart. It's way over here somewhere. And then by the 70s, we were getting 25-to-1 returns. But look how much green there is under that. Notice the shape of this chart. It's not linear.